What's up, you guys? Jay Daniel commented on one of my other videos trying to understand bread routes a little bit better. And the way I want to go about doing this initially is to try to compare FedEx routes to bread routes. Try to be able to figure out which one might be the better choice if either of them are a good choice for you. And then secondarily, try to establish whether bread routes are one of the best businesses to buy that you can typically get into for under $100,000. So when you start to see both of those ways, and the way I compare businesses, you will be able to compare other businesses as well. It doesn't matter whether they're routes or not because the framework will still apply and be incredibly valuable for you. So the first thing we've got to do is establish what the hell is a bread route. Well, it is essentially a business where you are contracting out through a major brand to deliver their products to grocery stores, convenience stores, food trucks, cafeterias, things like that. Wherever their product is sold, you are going to be delivering it. And it is a contractually based business, very similar to FedEx in the idea that you have one customer essentially, which is that major brand label. And essentially everyone that you are delivering to is not really your customer, even though you are serving those customers. So there's essentially 5 different major brands that will allow you to buy and sell these contracts to deliver their products. Those 5 companies are Mission Tortilla, Snyders-Lance, Pepperidge Farm, Flowers, not like an actual flour, but like the bakery, Flowers Bakery, and Bimbo, not your ex-girlfriend, but another bakery, Bimbo Bakeries. And so it's going to typically be one of those 5. You do have some other smaller options, maybe like a Martin's potato route, or potentially like a Voortman cookie, something like that. These are smaller sorts of routes that we don't really see for sale nearly on the scale as some of those other major brands. Also, you have a whole slew of other options in the New England area, like New York, New Jersey, that sort of area. Maybe they have like Snapple routes and things like that. Those are almost like a different model than the majors, which are those 5 brands that I listed out before. They have different sorts of structures, different sorts of operations. And so I'm going to focus primarily on the ones that are nationwide, such as like, Mission Tortilla and Pepperidge Farm and so on. So even though people call these businesses bread routes, that doesn't necessarily mean you're only delivering bread. You could be delivering tortillas in the case of Mission Tortilla. It could be chips if it's Snyders-Lance, could be cookies if it's Pepperidge Farm, and so on. All of those 5 major companies, which I'm going to refer to as the majors, essentially will deliver different brands under their umbrella. So for example, Sara Lee is going to be under Bimbo. You're going to have Nature's Own under Flowers. Lots of different brands you're going to be delivering. And typically a lot of these companies will have you delivering 50 to 150 different products on those routes. It's not just like one thing and that's it. So a lot of times when people look at buying a business, they just look at the net income or the cash flow. They say, oh, I like money. This business is good. I want it. And that's a terrible way to go about it. And there's a lot of different things that you need to start to weigh into your decision on which business is good for you specifically. What is a good fit for you? Because not all businesses are the same, obviously. And one of the biggest things that start to differentiate one from the other is, of course, the operations. What does the day in a life look like of a bread route owner versus, let's say, a FedEx route owner? So in the case of a FedEx route, what an owner does on a day-to-day basis can vary dramatically on what the owner wants to do, what sort of situation they're in, what types of routes, how many routes they have, lots and lots of different things. It's not just whether there's a manager in place. Like, that's obviously a factor, but it's not a big factor, honestly. And so when we look at bread routes, in contrast, most of those owners' day in the life looks fairly similar. So one of the reasons why it is so similar is that the bread route contracts basically stipulate that a lot of the people that own those contracts must be owner operators. The owner must go out and deliver the product essentially themselves. Now, it's not like this in every single company. And yes, you can have help and hire some people for some of the times. But for the most part, you will notice that most of the bread routes for sale have only one route that is for sale. It's not like they've got 10 bread routes that are for sale. Yes, it does exist. There's some weird stuff that goes on beyond that. We're not going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about the vast majority, which is most owners have one route and they run that route themselves. Again, they may have some people to help out here and there, but for the most part, they're doing it themselves and essentially have sort of bought a job. Now, when you have bought a job, it might be a very good job. It might be a wonderful job, but it still mostly kind of looks like a job. job in itself in terms of that day in the life and what those operations are for that contractor. So hopefully this makes sense in terms of why bread route owner operations are so similar. It doesn't matter what brand it is or how big or small their route is. They all basically are doing the same thing. So let's kind of go through what those guys are specifically doing. So there's a lot of exceptions and caveats that can kind of happen in terms of day-to-day operations with a bread route owner. But essentially, they're going to probably wake up around 3 o'clock in the morning. They're going to drive to the terminal and they are going to take the product that is inside of that terminal or warehouse. They're going to load up their box truck or truck and trailer and start to deliver product to whatever stores need it for that day. Let's say it's Costco, let's say it's Walmart, and then 5 convenience stores. So they say, okay, I know where I'm going. Let me load up the product that I need to deliver to those stores that I think are going to need that product, and let's get going. So they start to drive to their first store. They go into the backstock area where, let's say at Walmart, they have a receiver there. That receiver says, what are you bringing in today? They say, well, I'm going to bring in, 100 loaves of X, Y, and Z. They say, sure. Once that gets done, they basically create an invoice and the guy goes in and puts the product up onto the shelves. Now, I remember whenever I would be going through grocery stores, years ago, I just thought that whenever someone was putting up product onto the shelf, it was a grocery store employee. It's actually a contractor half the time because they are loading those products up onto the shelves themselves. Once they're done loading up all those products onto the shelves, maybe they leave a little bit in the back stock to have some sort of inventory in case like a shelf runs out of space or something like that. We're getting a little bit into the technicals here, but the point is they're going to continue to rinse and repeat that same process throughout all of the other stores that they're going to go to. So somewhere around 12 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they're generally done, even though there's no such thing as being done with a bread route, because as long as those stores can sell out, you're kind of like not done. But essentially, the majority of the work is done. Again, let's call it 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You go home and you may be on a day where you need to place an order so that product gets delivered to the warehouse so you can deliver it to whatever stores you need to go to. So you may say, oh gosh, Walmart was really low on X, Y, and Z product. Let me order some of that stuff so it'll show up in a few days and then I'll pick that up from the warehouse and go deliver it to Walmart. So essentially, that's it. It's a very simplistic and beautiful operation in general. And so once you understand what an owner is actually doing in their business, then you could start to begin to evaluate things a little bit better, right? Because in the FedEx world, they want to hide what exactly an owner is doing. Oh, there's a manager in place. Don't worry about it. Just cash checks, drink margaritas. Great. What are they actually doing? That's a little bit difficult. In the bread route world, it's a little bit easier because, again, it's so contractually stipulated on what is required from a contractor that it's a little bit harder, not impossible, but it's harder for a seller to hide what exactly that they're doing. And so then you can start to say, do I want to wake up early? Do I want to do physical labor? Do I want to have a very consistent or boring sort of business on a day-to-day basis and do the same things over and over? Okay, if you are okay with that, then maybe bread routes are an answer. If you say, well, gosh, no, I want to be able to scale this business and get 100 routes and I want to be a multi-millionaire with this, maybe bread routes aren't the answer. Doesn't matter how much money they're making because you can't really scale those things so well because, again, those contractual stipulations telling most people that they need to be owner-operators. Again, there are exceptions to this. We can deal with that on another video, but the point is you need to start thinking in these sorts of ways on what exactly is it that is going to be required of me to be successful. Then you could start to say, hey, maybe FedEx routes are the right thing, or hey, maybe bread routes are the right thing. And we're going to go into a lot more detail in contrasting a bread route and a FedEx route in another video, but the point is you first need to always be thinking about what it is you're doing. Now, in terms of whether bread routes are one of the best businesses to buy that you can get started for under $100,000, I'm going to cover that in the next video here. Check that out. And as always, like, subscribe, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.